Hey there, guys. It's me again, and I'm about to make the market go. Atata or Ome. Let's take a look. Monday, hard day, severe day, and in general. And anyway, I was going to increase my first entry from 300 to 500. But at the same time, I'm going to pick more specific deals, not how I do it. But I usually go in and work on pretty much everything in a row. So guys, I hope you understand if the search for deals takes a bit longer than usual. You can always keep an eye on the time for deal searches. You can check what time I finished a deal, what time I started looking for the next one, and how much time it took me. Basically, now what? It took me some time for that. Basically, now what? I'm looking for a situation, and I'm back. For example, this situation cut JPY 75%, 2 minutes 500 for an upward move. Here's the amount for the catch-up. I think that with such a percentage, 1500 will be just fine. Reason for entering on the rise. So I immediately look to see that there are more buyers than sellers compared to the previous candle. The overall volume, I can immediately tell that it will be higher than the previous one in the remaining minutes. Next, we move here. What do we see in this situation? We can see that all the recent lows are rising. So the buyer isn't letting the seller push down at all. So it's trying to form some kind of upward movement. The last stop I saw was right here. The seller gave us 2 weak candles. Next, what is the seller doing? It's trying to go down again. The buyer is buying up all this movement from the seller. And now it's almost reaching the recently made high. It's approaching for what purpose? To break through this high. What is the buyer doing for this? The buyer isn't letting the seller update their highs. Specifically in the last candle, we see a good buyback. This buyback is further confirmed by the volume data and candlestick analysis. And at the very top, we have the volume to break through this high. So to go higher, I absolutely don't care, just like everyone else in binary options, whether it comes into this area or not. Here, a small movement is enough to take a profit. Right now, I'm focused on breaking this high. Let it take off from here, let it take off, I really don't care. I'm entering on the breakout of the previous high for a couple of minutes, just to take a small movement. In the meantime, there are 5 seconds. Well, you see, it's again this give and take situation. You know, it's something I don't like. It gives back that profit of 5 points. All right, fine. So what happened? We updated the high. Yes. So this is the distance where I entered. I wanted to take my profit. We basically updated it the high. We got a pullback. Then why in 20 seconds? I already see a candle like this here. So you understand that the volatility is high. Just the fact of entering for an upward movement. Cluster. Candle with a buyback, 2 facts, cut-off logic, 3 facts, volume, 4 facts. So right now there were just a lot of facts supporting an upward entry. I took the strong side. Let's look at the situation further. Here's Euro Aussie. It seems like a situation. Nothing interesting, nothing at all. Let's take a look. We had news with increased interest. We made this low, so the nearest minimum for the price is located. Right at this point, what do we see here? Right now we see a good movement downwards, right? Look, 1, 2, 3, 4 candles. Next, there was a candle with a buyback. In short, either I'll skip it like this, that's it. Euro. All right, goodbye. Well, let me finish my thought after all. There was a pullback movement, meaning some buyer appeared. I didn't see that the buyer went up further. I looked at what has grown, basically interest. The number of buyers is less than the number of sellers, which makes the logic favor the seller. The main place where there could be liquidity is this news, this line, it's marked, the distance. There's volume for the seller, a candle for the seller. Why is it a candle for the seller if it's 50-50? Because if a buyer appeared with such a buyback, we would now see movement in the opposite direction. They are going down, but unfortunately, the percentage didn't allow us to take it here. Plus, we'll try to look at EuroCAD further. Let's do it like this. Let's see, EuroCAD was actually on smaller volumes at this moment. But again, logically, we're going down. Why are we going down? Try to remove this minimum because there are more interesting places below. And if we take a large scale situation, we need to remove this minimum. Right now, this kind of anomalous candle, I mean, how are you going to enter, for example, on a pullback against such a huge candle where there's a complete absence of buyers? But the interesting point is that there are fewer sellers in the candle, so this can be seen as a loss of strength in the cluster, but for now, there's no EuroCAD. Could there be a pullback here? There's actually an interesting point about what could be taken out in this situation. We're looking at the area of interest up and down. I see a lot of volume, 104 ticks at the very bottom, so there's volume here for the continuation of the movement downwards. You can assume that you see the area of interest was here, already here. So the sellers are dragging it there and managed to secure it at this moment. So the buyer isn't strong. Do you see how much volume is at the bottom? With this kind of volume, they can easily break through this minimum. So I wouldn't risk entering on a pullback here. Big candle, a ton of selling pressure. So based on the volume, there are absolutely no buyers. We're following the logic. For what reason? To break through this minimum rather than bouncing off of it. So in this situation, it's being missed. Although, if you consider it for a downward move and use, this pullback movement is in your favor. Just wait. But here, this moment caught my interest. There's a stop, by the way, according to the cluster. There's interest at the very bottom. Yes, there's resistance from the buyer. It wasn't even a removal. Oh no, it was a removal. There was a new minimum update and there's a reaction. Well, I certainly didn't expect such a reaction. Right now, I'm thinking about entering for a downward move. It's unlikely that there will be a strong buyer here, but I'm bothered by this big candle that in principle I would like to see closed, at least halfway. So what is the buyer showing us in ticks? At 23 ticks? No. I'm a EuroCAD. I'll probably consider going down, but I'll consider 4 minutes down. It seems to me that 2 minutes might be a bit too short because right now there's a pullback happening. So if they suddenly decide to go for it, trying to close this impulse, just in case, I'll take a bit more time. The distance allows for it. Well, take a look at these candles, how strong the seller was. And look, what kind of buyer was there? There was a maximum of 34 ticks. Something like that happened. That is, it was already possible to understand from the cluster that the buyer looks weak. According to the analysis, basically I told everything now and it will be 2 minutes. It would be ideal if 5 seconds went in. It remains until the end. That's a plus. And I remind you that I opened a general chat in the Telegram channel. If anyone is interested, you can drop by. This is how it all looks, and this is how it looks in terms of trading. So we're basically going lower, but it's clear that a pullback could be considered. However, if I'm going to enter on a pullback, I need to have an area that's either a bit smaller, not like this, or we should be closer to the minimum. I'm looking for the situation further, and then I'll come back. Euro GBP. What interests me about this moment? The fact that we have one minimum and there is a second minimum. So we have a decent area from where we saw a pullback movement. One, a pullback movement. Two, right now we're approaching with this kind of candle with fewer sellers and fewer buyers as well. A 6-tick buyer is appearing below, just a small one. And this pullback movement is already happening. What can be done in this situation? Well, look, if I wanted to enter on a pullback, I would have facts to support that after this candle. So my volume indicates that there's weakness from the seller, and the area of interest is at the very top. A buyer is appearing below. So based on the cluster, there are 2 more facts for entering a buy position. And there's an area from which there are also facts supporting a buy entry. But it's happening right now. So essentially the increase has already occurred. There's always a margin of error. Sometimes it happens quite often that the price doesn't reach the area just a little bit and it starts to pull back earlier. There's always a margin of error in the quotes because what we're seeing right now, in fact, it might already be in the area itself. So this is the quote provider. It depends because in principle, there isn't one place in Forex where everyone buys and sells. All quotes come from a large number of exchanges. Because of this, there can be a margin of error. What would I do right now? Right now, I would consider entering a buy position somewhere around the middle of this area. I would try catch the pullback, provided that I see a buyer or I see weakness from the seller. Overall, I understand. Look at the strong movement the seller is showing us, and he clearly doesn't intend to stop this movement. From here, I would take off and then go back along this upward trend. This still looks like an attempt to break through this area. Well, there's this strange candle again that I'd like to see close. This candle, look, there are some volumes by the profile here. So why not? Why not go lower? This, most likely, just recently increased. These volumes are likely concentrated. So regarding this movement, there is liquidity here. It makes sense to get through here overall. So let's see what we have here with Euro GBP. I didn't check the percentage again. There is a high pullback happening. All right, well, there are fewer sellers in this candle, which is great. The buyer is either not keeping up or is getting stronger. Well, I didn't manage to enter a buy position here from the start. Now we just have to wait. So we're looking for the situation to develop further. A GBP, UD, there's a very strong trending movement downward. Basically, there's a loss of strength in the cluster at the very bottom. The pullback is happening again. There were more sellers, fewer buyers. There's a divergence in the indicators. Yes. So again, there's no area. I can probably set a bell here to try to catch an entry point if it suits me. For example, somewhere in the middle of the area. Yeah, for now, I can't go any further. So EURG, 25 seconds to go. There's a seller down below. The area of interest is in the middle. By volume, the volume overall will be less than the previous one. There are fewer buyers. There are also fewer sellers for now, so neither here nor there. There's another stop. It's located right here. From where we are now, we're making a small pullback. So a 130 tick buyer. It's like, there's a really serious accumulation here. This even shows the volume. So I would enter for an upward movement from this spot. That would be great, of course. But right now, the seller for this candle and this candle, yeah, it's pretty much all the same. According to the cluster, there is a buyer, basically. But damn, to take off again from this moment. Basically, it makes sense. We didn't let it go down here. We didn't let it go down here, but we also didn't let the highs go to update. It's kind of a 50-50 here, and I would still consider entering from this spot. I'll be honest. I'll also give it a thumbs up and go click again. In this situation, the USD is at 67%. 67%. This is, of course, not enough, but I would try to take the entrance here to an upward movement with some risk. Let's say I've marked the stop, and I'll show this stop right away. I can't really count it. To enter strongly on a pullback movement from this spot, because look, we had one solid candle here, but it wasn't made on the best volume. Yeah, it's not like that, not like that. So there wasn't a spike here, and then there were 3 weak candles after that. So for me, in the evening, it's still quite volatile. You can go through this because we have a more interesting stop. Higher up, from here the candles were already bigger, and we're approaching this top. The most interesting thing is look at the movement. So there's a very strong trend going on. I've already seen this candle, the one that flew through the entire area. And look, the volume is increasing due to the buyer. This candle is taking out the maximum, just so you understand. And the seller is absent. Look, what's going on with the cluster in it? At the very top, there's a ton of volume pouring in. So, well, the seller isn't giving anything away. The area isn't giving anything away. The volume isn't giving anything away. The cluster isn't giving anything away. So I'm making the decision to enter here for the continuation of the movement. Well, that's how it is. I really couldn't have expected that. Well, there was a breakout, yes. Basically, it went even higher. But this movement seems a bit small, so I don't want to continue with this pair. By the way, this is already the 3rd win in a row, so I'm continuing to look for situations further. So here's the euro. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the percentage was bad on it, or am I wrong? Yeah, we're just about to approach a very interesting point where there is definitely liquidity. Look at this candle on the big ones, volumes. So, well, I didn't get lucky with the percentage here. The situation is still unfolding. And what about the GBP AUD matrix? What is it doing in this situation? I'll point out the stop. Next, I'm updating the lows, and now a retracement movement is happening. Yeah, so the candle is like a money button. It shows that there are more buyers in the fight than sellers with the red candle. Yeah, so look at the area of interest down below and up top. See how it's lighting up. Everything is absolutely showing that buyers are in control in this situation. So I'm taking the retracement movement. I don't want to All right, I'm looking further. The retracement is approaching with a very serious and dangerous movement. It's approaching the stop. What's above? There's something above. Oh, this is actually a good spot. Look at what a retracement came from here. We're approaching with a strong movement. All the candles are solid. There are hardly any sellers at all. Damn, it's dropping. Just starting from this point, look. We're approaching to break through this spot. For what purpose? We have a main high that we would like to break through. But it's really scary to enter against such a movement, of course, for a downward trade. So I would need to see some weakness or the appearance of some seller. So the seller is very weak for now. The candle is strong. I don't see any sellers in the cluster. Perhaps it will appear after these are removed. Here are the highs. A seller is appearing in the area, but the buyer is buying it back. The movement is buying it back. I'm still not going to enter. I would be interested in working with a retracement, but the approach is really serious. So the outcut is basically ready. It's buying back. Oh, it's buying back. There will likely be more buyers in this situation. Oh, what a weak seller up there. I think they will go higher and then come here. Come on, show me the update. Are you going to get caught on anything? At least something. Come on, I take the maximum. So they're buying back. All right, we're observing, not rushing. Okay, there's an update. Anything. It's immediately showing resistance. I'm going to take a risk and enter for a rise in this situation. A retracement. Let's prepare 1500 for this. I think that since this is binary, I should be able to pull it off if there's a retracement happening right now. But the buyer seems to be very strong in this movement. So right now we're observing the passage again. Everyone's at a maximum in one big candle, and what other candles were behind it? Well, logically, there's no sign of a seller anywhere. The money button isn't lighting up. It could have given it back. And for the 5 seconds, it's been on the rise for a while now. Let's draw our line. Bam, bam, bam. Here it is, the entry point. All right, 1 minute to go. A seller touch is showing up. Yeah, they should be buying it back. But can you imagine they might actually respond to him? That would be a real surprise then, because the seller hasn't shown themselves anywhere. Then we'll have to think about what to do next. There's 39 seconds left. Let's wait a little bit. 5 seconds. Again, yeah, movement, you see? 1 point. Well, come on, you won't give it up, huh? So you're really deciding to shave me off at the end. Well, for me, that's not a seller. So, well, what is that? Although it is becoming more prevalent, a very weak response. What is this little square compared to this one? I think the buyer needs to deal with this little square and still reach the main targets. But this little square is happening in this place for a reason. At this point, we had a good retracement movement. Right now, I'm not going to open a follow-up position immediately because there's a sharp impulse movement in the opposite direction. But this movement, in principle, I haven't seen it anywhere. Yeah, not based on the cluster, not based on volume, not based on the candle. So the most I could assume is that a seller might appear. This is because we had a good downward movement. From these prices, a good long one. Only this one fact might indicate the emergence. There's a seller here. Right now, it's not important to understand how strong the seller is here or whether the buyer can push higher. And for that, you need to wait closer to the candle's close. So for now, we wait. 1 minute left. The buyer is showing very strong resistance. So far in this candle, which is very good, yes, after reaching the maximum, we had a retracement movement from the seller, but we are providing resistance. The candle closes with a retracement movement, but the buyer couldn't take it in their favor. The only thing that confuses me is that in this candle, the volume from the seller has increased significantly. And right now, basically, we closed at the area of interest from the buyer. So for now, I have one trade was opened. I want to make the right decision in this situation, and I want to either pull back a bit or look for something else. Well, because right now, based on the facts, I'm a bit unclear about what the seller is growing on and why the buyer isn't showing up. So again, we have a very large buyback from the buyer, but we don't see any movement upwards. We're seeing some kind of seller again. 5 buybacks. And again, the buyer is trying to do something. All right, now this is getting more interesting. It could just be a sideways market. Come on, I have the distance to allow it. Audio cut.
there's still resistance. Why did the volumes drop so much? It was 60, then 20, and now it's down to 14. So here I need to make the right decision. This is the main point. There's less of a seller still in this pin bar. There's a bit more of a buyer. So we're fighting basically. If the seller was strong, he would have already driven the buyer out a long time ago. There was a very good movement behind its main goal. Basically, it was clearly not an update of that maximum when we have a main maximum to move them further. For me, this new trend is of course on a large scale. Here the buyer looks better, but right now I'm afraid of getting into a sideways trend where the price will now be moving up and down. If I open a buy position at this point, even for 4 minutes, if we've entered a consolidation phase, it's going to go down anyway. Still, I want to see a serious buyer here before I open any further trades. While they're drawing pin bars and crosses, I'm just going to keep an eye on the situation just in case. I couldn't find a situation to open a follow-up trade. So the area of interest is below. The seller closes the candle above. So it doesn't break through the area of interest. We leave it to the buyer. There are more buyers, fewer sellers, but more what? Why does the buyer allow this to happen to them? If this is a sideways market, we should watch for movement downwards. Good resistance from the buyer, and he's opening fire. Whew! Finally, he showed something. Damn, they really bought Tiki. 3? Terrible. Where's the volume? With that kind of volume, is there even any point for you to go higher? What's next for us? Next we have, oh wow, this is a really great high. There will be an approach for, wow, what a time interval that is. Look, yeah, that would have been a great entry point. All right, see you later. I'm interested in under this area. For the same buyer core who is now more or less giving us something, we need to, 1 minute, 10 seconds. All right, 5 seconds to go. There's some strange impulse happening right now again. Everything's falling apart again. Got it. Now we've entered the area, and this is where the impulse is happening. I understand. So a retracement movement. I wouldn't want to go against such a movement, but we have a long way to the next area. Let me think about what I can do. What can I do? Can I take a retracement movement here? The tick seller is basically rolling out of the area. Let me take another look at the situation, just in case there's something there. CHF and JPY, I would consider a retracement movement, but with a slightly lower amount. CHF and JPY. I'll take $100 for a short position. All right, I'll prepare the amount for the martingale. Everything I basically need to note in this situation is this high that we're currently updating from where the downward movement started. And the main factor, the entry for short positions is based on the fact that the interest at those prices was twice as high at that time, more than the interest now. So at that moment, this place was quite liquid, and a retracement movement can really be expected from here. Next, there's another very interesting point here. If we don't see a good seller appearing, since the buyer is generally pushing upwards, yes, again, we have a good approach. It's happening at this stop. According to our logic, we have the main high that attracts this buyer. So what does the buyer need to do? Yes, basically any buyer or seller needs to update their highs in order to extend their trend. Here, there's an interesting setup here. If we don't see a seller appearing, the price keeps going. It keeps going. Where is it going next? To this stop. This distance is for repositioning in your favor. You can move forward calmly. To take. It's exactly the situation in two directions. It didn't go up, it's going down. It's not going down, it's going up. There's basically nowhere else to go. Right. What do we see in this situation? This high is being updated. Some seller appears, right? So a pullback is basically happening. Everything is really on edge today. This is just crazy. 4 seconds. It would be nice if it gave back. Return. With such movements, the return is still like lucky. But now we understand that after reaching the maximum, the seller is currently quite weak. And the buyer is already giving him resistance. What's the situation again? The situation is most likely for a changeover. So in this situation, 2 minutes. entering for an upward move. Especially lucky we made a return, although I should have just counted the return as a loss and opened up at 250 in this situation. You won't give an impulse, right? Or will you? I adjusted it. Oh, I adjusted it. I pressed the pedal and the broker adjusted it. All right, let's go. The main fact here will be what will happen on this candle. That is, let's now wait for this candle to close and see if I was lucky or not. That is, if I had more time, for example, 3 minutes, I would probably have taken a confident plus. That's the standard for today. 5 points, 4 points, 4 points. It was 45 points, 5 points, 5 to 4. These are the numbers that are really following me today. But nevertheless, look, after reaching the high, the main fact is it's not going down. We don't see any reds here. We see greens here. So basically, according to logic, this movement is subject to. This is basically enough for me. As for the points I'm catching, you can basically refer to the expiration time and the current market, which is jumping up and down. But I think you don't have to be a genius to see that it was just going in place for 2 minutes in the accumulation on the 5 seconds. So the movement continued further. You're welcome. It didn't go down. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you need any help, support, feedback, or pointing out mistakes, I've created a closed community on Telegram just for you. So now let's say goodbye. Well, now what do we say? Goodbye?